Okay. So, would you please introduce your organization to me?
Well, yes. My name is, I'm going to follow your questions there. So, my name is Jim Mandlin. I am the Training and Membership Coordinator for Homelessness Services Association in BC. When I started with this organization, it was called ShelterNet BC, and then ShelterNet BC and the Greater Vancouver Shelter Strategy merged 3 years ago and became the Homelessness Services Association.
Okay. So what would you say that your organization does? Like, how would you describe what you guys do?
Well, we started when we were back in the ShelterNet days, and I'm doing the same thing, and I did the same thing then with ShelterNet. We, in the beginning, we were predominantly a training hub. So we found trainers that were experts in the field to train all the frontline workers in all the homeless shelters and women's transition houses.
Oh, okay.
And last count, there was when organizations signed us up as members, there was 13,000 staff at 200 plus agencies in the province.
Okay. And so, how did you come into this position?
Well, it's kind of funny. Myself, I have a lived experience with this. I was homeless for a lot of years, a drug addict, alcoholic, just a gang member, just homeless for a long time, starting when I was a child. So, so I worked for an organization called John Howard Society. What I did with them is I went into schools and told my story about gangs and drugs and, all the pitfalls of, getting into that lifestyle. And my manager left John Howard and became the director of ShelterNet. And she asked me to come over. She says, I really need you over here because you understand, some of the needs of what it's like in the homeless shelters and stuff. So I went over and, never thought of myself as an expert in the area, but apparently I've become that. And I'm just use my own experiences and things like that. So, that's kind of my old manager from another organization. She pulled me in and I just started answering the phone and started, booking hotels and catering companies to do a training in Fort St. John, Prince Rupert, Kelowna, wherever it was. And there's a lot of areas where we do this training. That before COVID, of course. Now it's all online.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. So then the next question, in your experience, what would the circumstances leading to homelessness be? And of course you don't have to share personal circumstances or anything, but with your organization and your experience working there, what would you say are some leading causes?
Well, I don't mind sharing my personal stuff because I'm a public speaker and I've shared with 500,000 kids in Lower Mainland over the last 30 years, so I don't mind. Why do people become homeless? What are the circumstances leading to that? Well, if you look at any of the data, metadata that's out there, Lancet, for example, Public Health, they did a December 3rd, 2019 on the coast. They hosted a program about it, and what I believe is the number one cause of homelessness is they say 53% in Canada, the homeless people have suffered a traumatic brain injury. And 80 to 90%, 70 to 80 different organizations have different data, but anywhere from 70 to 90% of those people, those 53%, have suffered traumatic brain injuries before they became homeless.
Oh wow!
And that that is definitely my story, because I was bullied really badly at school.
Mm-hmm.
My ancestors are indigenous from northern Finland, called the Sami people, the reindeer herders. Mm-hmm. And they escaped the persecution there and came to America and found it was the same over here. So they just kind of decided to hush up and pretend they're, take advantage of the northern European lighter skin and green eyes. And my grandmother told me that the men folk just made a decision for everybody, and we became white Christian Finlanders, and we never mentioned our indigenous roots again. Mm-hmm. So in that, when you're keeping secrets, it usually ends up, causing a lot of damage, alcoholism and stuff like that, displacement issues. So my grandmother didn't speak English. She spoke traditional Sami and Finnish mixture. And that's what I learned to speak, because she was the only one that really spoke to me when I was a child. So when I went to school, I learned that I didn't know, I had to learn to speak English. And I was the only kid in the school in Alberta that didn't speak English. And so the kids became very bullyish. Mm-hmm. And I suffered, by the time I was finished grade 7, which is the first year of high school, I had suffered 7 concussions. Oh wow! Where I lost consciousness for I don't even know how long. But it was a severe traumatic brain injury on 2 or 3 occasions. And then my life was kind of crap after that, for sure. Mm-hmm. I didn't do well, and then I didn't really have a home anyways, because my dad was a drunk and he beat up my mom, and she took off when I was 3. So I was like in this house of really angry people, my aunts and uncles. My aunt molested me my whole childhood, and I couldn't wait and I started running away when I was 12, which means when I lived away for a week or 2, I was living on a riverbank drinking alcohol with the native guys. I was homeless like they were. And then eventually by 15, I got old enough to think I could get way far away from these people. And I hit the streets of Vancouver, and I was homeless for not quite a number of years. So people often say, and I've heard this saying many times, oh, those homeless people, why don't they just get a job? Mm-hmm. The thing about that is there are some people who are marginally housed. They're just kind of making it. They're living in trailers, beat up old trailers, and I have to live in that kind of situation. Or, but, and there's other, child abuse, traumatic child abuse, with no brain injuries. You after a while, you're sexually abused. You just become disoriented from regular, loving, nurturing, caring society, and then you don't trust anymore. And I only went into shelters when I was a kid. I remember going into the Catholic Charities shelter, and I'd lay there at night on the mats, and there were mats in those days. They're beds now, and I was always like really paranoid, like really full of anxiety that some guy was going to come over and reach over and touch me. So I would just get up, and I would go and play cards with the night guy, which happened to be all these years later, that was in 1970, and 2 years ago I ran into him, and he was still working there, that guy. His name's Keith. So that was really awesome to meet him. But I sat and played cards and drank coffee with him all night. Otherwise, I didn't stay in shelters because I didn't trust, that I wouldn't be abused.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of homeless people are out there, and then mental health issues, of course, and addiction. And addiction is just a pain management system. It's how you manage your pain. Drugs and alcohol is how do you manage your pain?
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep yourself from, committing suicide? The feeling of committing suicide was on my mind all the time. And when I got high, I didn't care. I didn't care if I lived or died, or if I ate or I didn't eat, where I slept. It didn't matter. Except drugs gave me the power that if somebody went to touch me, I could punch them in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Protect myself. But if I wasn't on drugs and alcohol, I would just like go back to being that little child, powerless child. So I believe that a lot of these circumstances lead to the homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
It's what happens before. You're not born a homeless person.
Mm-hmm.
You're not born a criminal. You're not born an addict. Like, things have to happen that injure you, whether it's emotionally, physically, like whether it's brain injury, and that seems to be the consensus across Canada, is around half the people that are homeless have suffered traumatic brain injury, and a concussion is considered a mild brain injury. And guys that play sports and things like that, they suffer. But when they did the analysis and they interviewed all these 1,000 people in Toronto, a lot of the young people had brain injuries from sports injuries and car accidents.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them, it comes from assaults. 60% come from assaults. So that's some of the, and there's lots of integral little parts in there, what leads to becoming homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, in my experience, I mean, I'm telling you, everything I told you about mental health issues and depression is a huge one, and feeling like you're a piece of garbage on the planet, which is what I felt like when I was a kid, because my uncle beat me up all the time. Like, he would whack me over and over again, and some of the mental kind of torture is one day when I was 12, he held a gun to my head, and he made me drown 13 of my puppies in the lake, which is on our property. I had to hold their heads down underwater until they stopped kicking. And they were my friends, these puppies, and my dog. So if you put that together, you don't have much faith in humanity. And I was kind of closed in. I didn't hang out with kids in school because I wasn't supposed to, because they didn't belong to our religion, whatever religion that was, I don't even know today.
Mm-hmm.
But they were afraid of being found out that they were indigenous or something was going on. And so I had, when another farmer came over, my younger brother and I were told to go and hide. And we had to go and hide. And don't come out until these people are gone. I don't know why, but that's what they said.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, the perfect storm was created.
Mm-hmm.
And any number of the versions of that story I just told you, my story, is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Women, a lot of them suffer from brain injuries from, intimate personal violence, partner violence. So, yes.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that a situation is created and you're not, born into homelessness, for sure.
Yeah.
And do you think this isn't on the list, of course, but do you think that if any of this kind of trauma and mental health issues were dealt with earlier, do you think it could have prevented
yes.
it at all?
Yes. And I know that one of the question is what's missing in the media, but what's missing with the government?
Yeah.
And I'm actually just writing a big, huge report. I mean, huge report. I got 30 pages going already. And what it is it's what is the government not looking at? I mean, they're pouring money into homeless shelters and stuff, which they should, to try to get them off the street. Housing first kind of thing. But a homeless shelter is not a house. It's not a home. It's just a place to sleep for the night so you don't freeze to death or whatever, and maybe get some food. But what's missing in the government is putting money into recovery. I mean, you think about it, okay? A person been doing drugs for a long time, just a lot of pain, because I am now 43 years clean and sober. And I remember I quit cold turkey. I wanted to get clean so bad. And I had a bunch of supports helping me. But you drop the alcohol and the drugs, what are you left with? You're left with a horrendous amount of pain inside that you have to look at and deal with. I spent 1 year in bed crying. I couldn't stop. I had a little basement suite that some people gave to me for almost nothing, because that's what welfare would pay. And that's all. And I stayed there, and I bawled my guts out, and I didn't even know half the time what I was crying about. And I get up and go to my therapist for my therapy session, and it's twice a week, and I go to my group therapy session, and then I go to my sexual abuse group session and see my sexual abuse counselor, all within a week. And I would go there, and that was the only supports I had. And I know what it's like to go off alcohol and drugs and then face the demon. And as Gaber Mate calls it, the hungry ghosts, and they're hungry. And so you got someone that's in a shelter, and he says, okay, I want to get clean now. And they say to him, okay, we can help you there. Okay, we can get you on a wait list. Might be 3 months. Right. And I'm going to go back out on the street again and wait for 3 months. No supports. No, you won't. The person won't get clean, or they commit suicide, or they just go out and they try to stay white knuckle it, stay clean as long as they can, and they make a month, and their pain is so great, they go and shoot up, and now they've been off the drug for a while, and they shoot up what they used to shoot up, and they overdose, and they're dead. So these are the kinds of things that are missing. That the problem is they have people in policy making and in government who have never ever suffered any kind of calamity like that. I mean, we all have our story. We all have our hurts. But I'm talking about deep traumatic wounding. And I've been in prison numerous times. I was in prison at a time when there was no prison, so judges were reluctant to send kid like me, and I was a kid, 15 years old, in an adult prison, because there was no kid prison back then, and so I was just in cell block in an adult prison. And you know what? It's prisons are full of people with such deep wounding. Even more, like 80% of people in prison have traumatic brain injuries. 53% of homeless people have 80% in prisons. And so what kind of chance you got. So that's that kind of stuff. What's missing?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you were saying about the government not understanding, and I feel like it's like that within the community as well. Like even myself, I wouldn't understand it without experiencing something like that. And I feel like
yeah. And those are the people that are in. A friend of mine from an organization, she gave me a book to read, and wanted me to critique it. It was on homelessness, and it was from Britain, and it was called Stuart. And Stuart was a homeless guy, and this writer who grew up with privilege was writing his book and his story. And what happened is he didn't make it, and he jumped in front of a train. We don't know if it's suicide or if it's just he fell or something because he was drunk. But he died in the end. But he wrote the story anyway. The one point that I found to be so frustrating was this author kept asking. For example, Stuart got off the street and got a flat apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he had so many issues, anger issues and stuff. And one day he took and picked up the television and put it through the wall, and he got booted out.
Mm-hmm.
And this author says, "Stuart, why did you do that? Why did you do that? You had a place to live." And Stuart goes, I don't know. Because he doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know why he did that. He screwed up his own life, because that, for example, that's not the question that should be asked.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oprah one day, I heard her a few years ago on TV talking about it, but I've been talking about it for years. But she said, we're actually asking the wrong question. We're saying, what's wrong with you? How come you're acting that way? Why are you doing that? That's the questions that public, because you if you grow up in privilege, you don't do stupid things. That means you've had a nurturing parents or somebody in your childhood that really nurtured you and cared about you and just valued you. So you value you, kind of thing. You learn to value yourself because people valued you. And you have people like that they look at someone like me, the way I was, and they go, oh, like one old woman said to me one time, and it haunted me for years, Jim, you always quit just before the good things happen for you. And it used to bother me. Why? Well, those people that haven't had the experience of not being trashed all the time, they don't know. They don't know why I do that. So the question should be, like Oprah said, what happened to you? Not what did you do and why did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to you? What happened to you to make you treat yourself so badly and then act out in public, which got you in trouble, to go put you in jail? Do you like going in jail, kind of thing?
Yeah.
So that's where you end up, and you go, why did I do that? You ask the same question as everybody else. Something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you study brain injuries, actually, you find that, or mental health, they all have the same kind of components. Irrational behavior, emotional disturbances, and you freak out, and anger issues, and all these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, like Stuart, you can't stay housed without complete wraparound supports. And that's missing. That is missing from our, helping the homeless people.
Mm-hmm. And
lots of people try, and they're good guys and good people, but they're,
Mm-hmm. And I think that relates extremely well with the question about how can we lessen the stigma. I think if more people could just understand what you said about how we're asking the wrong questions, I think it would really help lessen the stigma against homelessness.
Well, yeah, definitely, because there's different kinds of stigmas put upon people because they don't understand them. If they're afraid, if people are afraid, there's drug addicts, they're going to leave needles all over the schoolyard or something. My kid will get stabbed and get disease.
Yeah.
People get afraid, and when they get afraid, fear is the... tell me something. Do you know what the opposite of love is?
I would say hate.
Yeah. Everybody says that, but it's not. That's not the opposite of love. The opposite of love is fear. Look it up. But that's the opposite of love. And when you have fear, that's where hate lives. So if you're afraid that, anything, you're afraid that you're going to get laid off in your job, and you've worked really hard for 10 years at that job, and you're going to get laid off because of some other reason, you're going to look at some homeless person getting like handouts or welfare or something, and you're going to be you're going to be pissed, and you're going to, that's where stigmas come from. Is prejudice, whether maybe you're indigenous. I remember growing up back in Alberta, and all I heard from the adults was, he's a drunken Indian. No, he's a wounded Native guy. And never mind getting started with the wounds that Native people have, from residential schools to wherever.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think you explained really well what the media could be leaving out of the homeless situation in Vancouver as well.
Yeah, they're leaving the media. Media is another giant. They're part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's because they are trying to sell people to watch, and every once in a while they have some kind of kind act by somebody to kind of veer off the negativity. But it's always, they're looking for all the bad stuff, always the bad stuff. Oh, a homeless person is shot by a police officer. There's no real story to it. They should, media should be able to allow people, not just drunk and crazy people, telling their story, because they may not be able to tell their story. They don't even know what they need because they've never had it. It was years and years down the road, even into recovery, before I knew. Like I consider myself only having a home I'm 65, and I consider only having a home in the last 22 years. I built a home, not with notes, but I built a home because where does home is about having a community. It's about having, safety. The three S's of having home: safety, security, and stability. And I never had those, and so having building a home was first. I had to build a relationship with myself. So imagine this. You walk into a room. You're full of anxiety. You walk into the room. You're always afraid that no one's going to accept you and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's going to hate you, because that's the foundation that was laid for me as a child. And you walk into a room and you plant your back against the wall and you take a look around and you look at all these people and you go, How are they acting? How are they relating to each other? How are they being? You leave the wall and you do exactly what they do. You become them. The sad part is you left yourself back at the wall. Mm-hmm. And then you never go back to get yourself. So the person that you were, with your sensitivities and your whatever, has to go aside just so you can fit in, just so you can be accepted and allowed to be a part of a community, which is really you're pretending. Mm-hmm. And there came a point when I got tired of pretending, even in recovery, well into recovery. And so I went to therapy because I didn't know who I was. And I found an amazingly brilliant little old lady who was my therapist. She was 60 years old. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. And she said to me on that first day, if you trust me, I'll help you see that the pain in your life right now, and I had a lot of pain, comes from your childhood. And I go, what's my childhood got to do with it? And she says, trust me. And I trusted her. Mm-hmm. And she showed, she correlated the pain I had in my life, the struggle, I couldn't keep a job on track. I've lived in 100 places because either I kind of spend the money and then I don't pay the rent, and as time went on, I had kids, so I paid the rent first, and there's not enough money for food. Well, I'll have to go to the food banks or go to work and try. You have mm-hmm. no education, so you try to do something, right? Mm-hmm. And then. But she helped me build a relationship with myself. She treated me the way that I wanted them to treat myself. And as mm-hmm. I treated myself better, and I didn't eat junk food and crap. In 1984, I was right in the middle of therapy, and I decided I'm not going to drink coffee anymore. I'm not going to eat meat anymore, and not that meat's bad, mm-hmm. but I had to quit eating meat. I smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day. I had to quit that, cold turkey. Mm-hmm. No more pop, no more chips, junk food and gum and all the stuff that I did. I quit it all. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I have only gone back to eating fish. I have not had a chocolate bar or a bottle of pop or anything since then, because she taught me that stuff is high sugar content. It's not good for you. It mm-hmm. messes you up. And my God, I tell you, my life changed. And mm-hmm. I started to care about me. And that was the beginning of my developing and building a home for myself. Because mm-hmm. I have to take myself into that home. And it took a long time for me to find a partner, a woman that I tease her. I say, you're a West Side girl and I'm an East Side boy, because she did, she had divorced parents, but she had 4 parents, not just 2, mm-hmm. And they cared about her, and they helped her out, and she went to university, got a couple of degrees, she and in the beginning, I often wondered, why is she with me, kind of thing. But she said, you're real. Because I don't hide stuff. You, in the first hour, probably by the end of this conversation, you'll know me. There's mm-hmm. lots of little pieces you won't know, but you'll know me. You'll know who I am as an essence. Mm-hmm. Not who I am. I'm a big guy. I got lots of money. No, I don't have lots of money, but that's not who I am. Who I am is I care, mm-hmm. and I have the ability to love now, even though I was never loved. I was loved through my therapists. I had 2 therapists that were great, people that that helped me, my AA sponsor, and my AA uncle kind of thing, they cared about me, and they showed me, why are you caring about me? I'm a piece of garbage. No, you're not. And they stuck with me until I could say to myself, well, maybe I'm not a piece of garbage. And then I stopped acting out, and I stopped moving. I've been 23 years now in the same place, in the same house. Yeah. Before that, I moved quite a bit, even with my kids. And I raised my boys by myself 15 years. And I had to make a home for them. So it was a tough job, but yeah.
And I think one thing that I really took from your story was the difference between a home and a house. That I think a lot of people, especially the news, they say like, build housing and help them find a house, but then they completely disregard the fact that it's not a home just because you have a house. Right?
Yeah, they give them and put them in a house. Housing first, and I believe in housing first. So does Homelessness Services. We believe in housing first. But once they get them into a house, and that's necessary. You can't go to therapy living on the streets. I mean, some people can, and I probably would have, because I was born with a strong constitution, according to my therapist. But it's like you put someone in a house, and then they have no skills. Lots of them have no skills. They don't know how to pay bills. You just throw them in a house, and that's it. No, it's wraparound services. They need everything they could possibly need to get back into community and get themselves back and get their relationships on track and develop new relationships, ones that are not abusive.
Yeah,
it's a huge job. It took me to turn it all around, and it's not over. I mean, my present wife, she would say to me, the first 10 years, it was like you had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like you couldn't quite come home because I this little part of me from my childhood go, okay, all of a sudden she's angry, but she's not angry at me. She's angry at the system or whatever. And she'll get angry, and then I'm going, all of a sudden I'm triggered. That's my post-traumatic stress disorder. Triggered. I go, holy shit, she'll get mad, and she'll just say, get the hell out of here. And I'm homeless again. It's that easy and quick. But I've created a recovery, so I can say to myself, no. Even if she does, she's going to have a real problem getting me out, because I have my name on the lease as well.
Yeah.
And besides that, we have had so much history of talking things out when things weren't, when she was having trouble or I've having trouble. We talked with each other. So there's a support system. But it's still there, but very little compared to the old days. I mean, I was living with a woman, and she freaked out and got mad. I don't even know to this day what it was about. Maybe it was about something I didn't put the cup in the right place or something. I walked out and never went back. That's my childhood all over again. So, yeah. So I'm kind of through that.
And so yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking, so now that you're with the Homelessness Services Association of BC, what do you think the impact you guys have made on homelessness in Vancouver?
Well, I know from my job position, I'm constantly looking for training with people in the shelters. They have to have a trauma-informed view of mental health and addiction. Like, it has to be trauma-informed. It can't be what's wrong with you? Why are you drinking when you're wasting your life?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of what happened to you. Tell us what happened. Tell me your story. That's what my therapist said to me.
Mm-hmm.
On the back of my truck, I have this sticker, that big sticker. It comes from friends in Florida, but it says, "Your story matters."
Mm-hmm.
It's about our stories. And people, when you work in a shelter, you just graduated from university and you got a bachelor's degree, and a shelter hires you to be a case manager. So first person comes in, he's a 42-year-old guy, all traumatized out, addicted, and he smashes his fist on the table and says, "They didn't give me my check."
Mm-hmm.
And you come from the burbs and you have privilege and you've gone to university because you have all that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to pee yourself.
Yeah.
Like, how do you deal with angry people? How do you deal with people with through a trauma lens? You have to look at them through a trauma lens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go hunting for different. I'll give you just a few of the trainings that I find the good trainers. So
Mm-hmm.
effective document and report writing for the shelter, specifically for the shelter sector. So we have a guy he was a manager of a shelter in Surrey. He's really good at writing reports. Suicide risk factor checklist, things like that. Working with elderly shelter clients. And we work with TRAC, which is the Tenancy Rights Advocacy Center. They because we have a lot of members that help their clients get housing and keep housing and, sort out legal matters, and because they don't have the skills yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the TRAC does, all kinds of dispute resolution, how to just do it through the court system or whatever. They help us with that. Working in rural communities. I had to find somebody to help people that are, there's homeless in rural. There's a lot of homeless in the rural communities, like small towns and stuff like that. And then help for managers, attendance management, how to manage your workforce, and case planning and substance use and awareness training, organizational prevention of vicarious trauma, because you're working in a shelter and you have 40 shelter clients come in through the door and they're all traumatized. Eventually, you're going to be traumatized by their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So there's vicarious trauma. So you have to deal with that. So I'm always on the hunt. I just did it. We just hosted it last week, but it took me 4 years to find a guy and he was perfect. He did a webinar on traumatic brain injury, and he's from Victoria, and it was fantastic, and people loved it. And then hundreds of people attend these things.
Yeah.
So that's my job with the homelessness services, try to make an impact on the homelessness. But my team, not right now because it's COVID, but we have done homeless counts. We did the Vancouver homeless count, the last one. We did the provincial homeless count in 16 communities. We started this last year to do 20 communities, but COVID hit and they couldn't go. So, and then we do. One of my colleagues in my team members, she does. She takes care of the EWR, which is the extreme weather response. So she figures out, what the weather is and stuff, and then she phones all the EWR shelters, which are just overnight when it's cold or miserable out there. They open the doors, and so she sends out this message that this 10th Avenue Church EWR, the Evelyn Zeller Center, this and that is open, and so people can go be sent there. and the ones that when the shelters are full. And so she takes care of a lot of that. And she's a program director, and we manage things like, for example, we negotiate between BC Transit and BC Housing, and we get a bunch of bus tickets, and we put out to the shelters, what they need. So they say we need 45 tickets, bus tickets, and so they're sent to that shelter, and then that shelter can give a person that has to go on a special medical doctor's appointment across town, there's a bus ticket, and things like that. So we're involved in a lot of things, and you can see a bunch of stuff on our website. The biggest part, I guess, is the training and training part of it. But we advocate, and we have a new boss this last year, and he's really, really good. He's hunting down the minister of poverty, and come and do a webinar for us and stuff like that. I had Bonnie Henry's assistant on doing a webinar for me in the past few months, things like that. So we're constantly thinking about our members' needs, because they're the ones that are serving the boots on the ground, caring about the homeless people, and they need supports. So our organization is actually supporting the people that work with homeless people. So that they have tools in their toolbox when they run into an angry person or something. How to when I used to work for John Howard Society, and I didn't smoke, but I always carried a couple packs of cigarettes. And when somebody comes in and he's flaming angry because he didn't get his check, and we did a post office box. If they've been in prison, they don't have a post office address, so it all their mail comes, and then we go in the mailbox and okay, here's your check, and it's not here yet, and they're just flaming angry. So I go grab a cup of coffee, and I say, have a cup of coffee, and I'll look into it for you. You want to smoke? And because that's what they half the time they want is a cigarette, and they don't have any money for cigarettes, and they're going crazy. I know what that's like because I was a smoker. And so they go out and sit under the awning and smoke their cigarette and stuff, and I go in and look, and I phone whatever. I know the places to phone, and it's being held here. Can we come down and pick it up? Yes. It wasn't. Somebody forgot to mail it out. So I jump in my truck, and I get the client to come with me. We go, pick it up, walk in, pick it up, give it to them. Do you have a bank account? I'll just take the money mart. Well, we have a way to run it through where they don't charge big money like the money mart does. So we learning to how to de-escalate somebody's anger. It doesn't take much. So that's what Homelessness Services is, supporting the organizations that are on the front line.
I think that's really important too. I never thought about how much training people would need in certain situations.
Well, I have a list here, and there's 80 webinars.
Oh wow!
And that's like all kinds of webinars. Anti-oppression, fundamentals of anti-oppression, the ones we just did in the last little while. Supporting survivors of sexual assault, brain injury 101, emotional intelligence in the workplace. These are all experts in the field that, and then COVID, we had to produce a lot of COVID ones, and what do we do? And, these guys standing in line, they don't social distance, they tell me to F off, and, stuff like that. How do you deal with it? Don't worry about it. Stuff like that. Like, you can't make people, there's a group of people, what do? Send the cops in and arrest them? And then you lose them? So it's
And so what do you think that youth like myself and the rest of my team would be able to do to combat this problem? And what can we do with our school community?
You know what? What's really good, I find, is education for youth.
Mm.
And that's what I do. I go, when I can. I used to go in, part of my Homeless Services Association mandate is to go and educate youth. So I would go to a school and talk to like hundreds, thousands of kids. Mm-hmm. And now I just did one because we figured out how to do it. I created a Zoom count. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a class in Surrey, Frank Hurt, of 32 kids. And then on the 13th, I think it is, of November, I'm going to be talking to about 90 kids. Mm-hmm. And then I have about 10 of them set up. So I tell my story, but in a focused way. Mm-hmm. And so kids go, they go home and they got a home. Mom and dad's there. Not everybody. Sometimes they're just the mom there and just the dad there. Mm-hmm. But, they have a place to go and they have something to eat and, they don't have to worry about stuff except for school stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, this is how, they see on television, they see all the reporting about all these homeless people out there and all these drug addicts and all the attitudes that the media projects, Mm-hmm. It's like, why don't they get a job? And they interview people on the streets. Like, what do you think we put in this modular in your community? Well, they're just a bunch of drug addicts. No, actually, they're not. Mm-hmm. They were drug addicts. They got clean. They were staying in an SRO because that's all that there is for housing, affordable housing. Now they put a modular in, and there's 40 units in the modular. And you can't get into a modular if you're jamming needles in your arm. Mm-hmm. You're getting in there because you're on a road of recovery. And now you have a place to live. Mm-hmm. So people, the public, the media doesn't say that. So part of my job is to go into schools and I could come and talk to all your class. We could do it online, I guess now. Mm-hmm. I talk to Catholic schools. I talk to all the public schools. I've talked to about 500,000 school kids. Mm-hmm. My kind of target group is teenagers. Mm-hmm. Grade 10, 11, that area, 12, or grade 6s and 7s, because mm-hmm. those are the kids that they're open to listening. When they're grade 8 and grade 9, they're kind of like goofy and talk about sexual abuse and they all start giggling, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But grade 6 or grade 7, they go, oh my God, and I kind of hone it so that I don't talk about my aunt grabbed my penis. Mm-hmm. I say she touched my private parts. Mm-hmm. So it's appropriate to the age. Grade 10s, I'm wide open. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. And so as a youth, and what can you do to combat the problem is gets education. Bring in education. Get your teachers to bring in people like myself. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that. I've been going to schools for 31 years now. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down because the problem is getting worse. And mm-hmm. I go to the kids' prison and I go to universities and I talk to classes of up-and-coming police officers, prison guards, border guards. I've been doing that for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So, yes. So, you can raise money and mm-hmm. put that money and give it to a shelter. There's always groups of school kids that do that. Mm-hmm. And that's helping with the problem because they need money because the government's not throwing a lot of money at it. Yeah. But educate yourself. What I mean by that, I'm not talking about textbook school education. Yeah. I'm talking about go to people with lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I don't mean go out and get a homeless person off the street and say, okay, what's your experience? Well, he's still in it. He or she's still in it. But I can tell you what it was like in it, how I got there, and how I got out of it, and what I had to do when I got out of it to change my life and my thinking. Because you can't think your way into a new way of living. You have to live your way into a new way of thinking. So you have to live it, live out and learn, live and learn. Because then things come up inside of you and you go, what the heck is this? I'm afraid of that. Why am I afraid of that? Let's dig around. Let's go down the rabbit hole. And we find, now I know why I felt that. I remember that, like, for example, I hate guns. Well, why do I hate guns? My uncle he slept with a gun. He pointed that gun at me 1,000 times. He was a bully. Why did he bully me? Well, because my dad, who was a lot bigger than him and older than him, bullied him. Because that's how bullying works. My dad bullied him. He bullied me. Because I was smaller than him. So you start understanding, so I've talked on all the subjects of whether it's bullying, homelessness, addiction, gangs, mental health issues. I've been a part of mental health forums for years, and all in high schools. So, yeah.
And I'd say for our project, I think our main goal is to educate ourselves and then pass what we learn in our community and try to share it in the best way that we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the interview.
Oh, no problem. Not at all. I enjoy it. I'm a public speaker anyways. I've been doing it. I'm not shy about anything. And I don't hold nothing back. I mean, everything's... I wrote a book that... I would have liked to write a book about my recovery, but it's so intricate, and I'm kind of working on that right now. But I wrote a book that published in 2012 called The Life Worth Dying For, because I did cocaine and whiskey, and at one point it gave me a heart attack when I was 22, and I was pronounced dead in the hospital. But I did come back alive because here I am, and I wrote a book about it and So I wrote a book about how it was I became a drug addict and criminal and homeless and all that stuff. So, and it's on my website, jimmandlin.ca. If anybody wants to know about me, you can take whatever you want off of there. I got hundreds of things in there, like how to get clean and sober, like little blurbs and stuff. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of thing. So help yourself to anything you find on my website.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, thanks again. Thank you so much.
Anything else?
I think I'm definitely gonna share this with my team, and yeah, we're gonna find what information we can to share within our school community, and I think this really helped with our project.
Yeah, just feel free to share it, and because I'm not, I don't. It's me, as long as you don't misrepresent me. But I'm Jim Mandlin and not somebody else. So whatever information that can help, by all means, use it.